This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. Well, tense moments have turned to calm in Minneapolis and across the country after a jury found former police officer Derek Chauvin guilty of all charges in the murder of George Floyd. The conviction is only another step in a process which continues with Chauvin's sentencing in a couple of months now. Here's more on the verdict, which came down Tuesday night after a jury deliberated just over 10 hours.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
The decision was swift.
As to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty.
And powerful.
Count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty.
Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts. The former Minneapolis police officer, now a convicted murderer. The jury took just 10.5 hours to find Chauvin responsible for the death of George Floyd after restraining him with his knee across his neck for more than 9 minutes last summer.
I think it was inescapable and overwhelming proof for the jury to find him guilty.
Attorney Joe Caulfield says the evidence was overwhelming, and this verdict should leave many with confidence in the court system.
Seeing that police officers are held accountable will give a renewed sense of confidence that our system of justice works in this country.
But this guilty verdict doesn't mean this is over. An appeal is likely, especially after comments made by a U.S. representative during the trial calling for a guilty verdict.
We got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Judges are very protective of their juries, and judges do not like when people in positions of authority, particular government officials, make public statements that appear to tell the jury that they have to do or should do one thing or another.
That Congresswoman Waters may have given you something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned.
And we have reaction from members of the minority community. Our USVI News' Haley Potter sat down with faith leader Bishop Dwayne Brock and listened with him as the judge read the jury's verdict aloud to the nation. He tells us he has waited almost a year to hear if justice would be served to George Floyd's family, and he was pleased as soon as he heard Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 charges.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony.
The nation was watching as the jury Tuesday found former police officer Derek Chauvin guilty of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter.
The world was waiting with great anticipation to see a guilty verdict on all the charges. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And I thank God.
And I was sitting down with Bishop Dwayne Brock as this anticipated verdict was being read.
Find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45.
The justice system finally working on behalf of the victim, an African-American man.
He says this has been going on for years, and there have been many quote-unquote George Floyds.
For years and years and years within the United States of America, but nobody would listen.
But says maybe George Floyd is the sacrificial lamb in the situation, someone who could prevent this from happening in the future.
It has to stop. We need justice, and we need justice now.
He wants people to understand this is not a black issue, but instead a human rights issue.
Human rights issue, because when we had the march of 2,700 people, you saw black and white coming together to say enough is enough.
He says the verdict is a start, but we still have a long way to go as a nation. For USVI News, I'm Haley Potter.
And Brock says he thinks technology is bringing us in the right direction because without video evidence, he believes this verdict could have gone a very different direction. Well, now to health news today. European health leaders now say the benefits of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine outweigh the risk of developing blood clots. The comments came after the agency's announcement of a review of blood clot cases prompted a pause in the rollout of the vaccine in Europe and the United States last week. It was the latest blow to efforts to tackle the pandemic, which has killed more than 3 million people worldwide. President Biden speaks more about his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the state of vaccinations on Wednesday. The remarks come as all adults in the U.S. are now eligible for the vaccine, meeting an April 19th deadline Biden set a few weeks back. The U.S. has administered first-dose vaccines to more than 131 million people, and the CDC says more than 84 million people have been vaccinated nationwide, fully vaccinated, that is. Well, long-delayed hurricane relief funding is now on its way to Puerto Rico. On Monday, the Biden administration released $8 billion in disaster relief stemming from Hurricane Maria. That's according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The money was held up under the Trump administration, which had concerns about potential political corruption on the island territory. The Biden administration previously released another $1 billion back in February. In a statement, HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge said, quote, "The actions taken by HUD today will unlock access to funds Puerto Rico needs to recover from past disasters and build resilience to future storms while ensuring transparency and accountability." And when it comes to traveling in and out of Puerto Rico, new restrictions now have travelers facing a massive fine if they don't have a proper COVID-19 test. USVI News' Alanis Quinones has details of the island's new restrictions.
Orientación la va a recibir el visitante en la propia declaración de viajero.
Governor Pedro Pierluisi announced that any traveler who arrives in Puerto Rico without presenting a molecular test or PCR for COVID-19 whose sample had been taken within a period of 3 days or 32 hours prior to arrival will receive a fine of $300. But if he or she presents one done on the island within a 48-hour period, the fine will be lifted. This will happen from the 28th of November, like reported by the designated Health Secretary Carlos Mellado.
Lo que pasa es que se supone que esa persona esté en cuarentena.
While the traveler receives a negative result, it was established he or she must remain in isolation. This also means that the quarantine option given to travelers so far if they didn't bring a negative test when traveling is eliminated. The health department assured they would be the ones monitoring the process, but it wasn't clear if they actually have enough employees to do that.
Me place anunciar en el día de hoy que ya en Puerto Rico se han administrado 2 millones de vacunas.
Regarding the vaccination, the governor announced Puerto Rico reached 2 million inoculated citizens, while the leading variant on the island is the B.1.1.7 from the United Kingdom, with at least 90 cases reported. Reporting from Puerto Rico, Alanis Quinones.